Hi, welcome to Tina's Treasured Expressions. Today we're going to be doing crochet stitches, and we're going to be learning the very basic single crochet and double crochet, and there will be lots more of crochet coming on this channel soon, and I hope you will join me.
So let's get started. So today we're going to need scissors, a yarn needle for sewing in ends, and I use the bobby pins for stitch markers, and I am using a 5.25 millimeter crochet hook. And today I'm using Bernat Softy baby yarn, and on the side of the package it shows you how to get your yarn out. So what you do is you squash it down, and then you'll take your finger and you'll dig in the middle until you find an end, and then you just pull it out. And I've done that here, and sometimes it gets tangled, also known as yarn barf. I've untangled this, so let's get started. And to do that, you put the yarn in your hand and you wrap it around your thumb and your first finger, and then you'll wrap it around into an X pattern, and then grip it with your middle finger, then put the hook under both strands and grab the back strand and go under the front. Then you're going to slowly pull your fingers out and tighten that on your hook. So then you'll have your loop, and then you're going to drop the tail, and then this one here is the working yarn. I'm going to hold the working yarn tight, and I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to make sure that it's in my hand firmly, flip my hand around. Then I'm going to grip the tail and slowly turn the hook to the side and go through that first loop. Hold that loop on the hook. I'm going to yarn over again, hold the tail, pull it through again, and I'm just going to continue doing that by yarning over and pulling it through the loop. Now we're going to count our chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now I'm going to take my working yarn and firmly grip that, wrap it around my first finger, hold my chain tightly. Then I'm going to find my second chain from the hook, poke that through. Then I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to go through that chain, pull up a loop. Now I have 2 on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and go through both of those loops. The yarn split, so I'm going to go through the rest of that loop. That is my first single crochet. You'll see the wide opening, so you know that that chain is done. Now I'm going to find the next chain, which is this one right here. And sometimes the first chain is always a little tight, so just wiggle it through, and then yarn over and go through the chain, and you have 2 on your hook, and yarn over again and go through both loops. And that's another completed single crochet. We're going to go through the chain again. And again, if it's tight, sometimes you can just separate it and open it up until you can see where the chain is. So push that through, and then you're going to hold that, yarn over, and go through the chain, and yarn over and go through both of those loops. And we're going to continue on, and I'm going to slightly speed up the video, and we're going to continue on until we get to that last stitch. And here we are. So to do the last stitch, we're just going to go through this stitch, which is our chain, put it on the hook, yarn over, go through the chain, yarn over, and go through both of those loops. Now we're going to flip that and count our stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And on the second row, sometimes it's hard to see that last stitch, so I'm going to put a stitch marker. Now we are ready to start row 2, so let's get our hook back in there, and we are ready to start. Yarn over and chain 1, and that does not count as a stitch, and we're going to find that first stitch, and we're going to go under the stitch. It's like a V, so we're going to pick that up, and we're going to yarn over, and we're going to go under the stitch, and then we're going to yarn over again, and we're going to go through both of those loops. There is our first stitch. Now we're going to find the next one, and there it is. So we're going to go under that, being sure to catch both sides of that stitch. So we're going to do that, and we're going to yarn over, go under the stitch, and yarn over again, and go through both of those loops. So we're going to continue on by going under the stitch, catching both sides, yarn over, go through the stitch, yarn over, and go through both loops. Okay, here we are at the last stitch, and I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to grasp that last stitch, and I'm going to go through that stitch, going to yarn over and go under the stitch, and yarn over again and go through both. And to continue on, all you would need to do is flip your work around and chain 1, and be sure to count your stitches at the end of every row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So at the end of every row, you should have 12 stitches, and then the last stitch you will mark with a stitch marker. And that is how easy the single crochet is. Now we are going to end that by cutting the yarn off. Then we are just going to take the hook and pull the last bit of that yarn through the loop and tighten that up. Now we're going to weave in our ends, and to do that we're going to pick up our yarn needle and we're going to take that yarn. It's easiest to fold it in half to thread it through the eye of the needle, and we're going to pull that through the other side. Okay, now to weave in the tail, we're just going to flip our work over and we are going to catch the next few stitches on the back side, and then once we pick up a few, we are just going to pull that needle through. Now I'm going to go in the opposite direction to make sure that my end is in nicely by picking up a couple of threads in the back. Once I do that, I'm going to pull the needle through, and then I'm just going to slightly tug on it and stretch it out to make sure that it's in there good. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and cut that final tail off and stretch it. And now it is in there and woven in and secure. So that is all there is to the single crochet. Now we're going to move on to the double crochet. First, we need to also start with our slip knot by wrapping around both of my fingers, and then we're going to take that hook and go under both and go under that back yarn and bring it through under that front yarn. Take your fingers out, and then I'm just going to tighten that onto your hook. Now we're going to start by yarning over and pulling it through that first loop. Yarn over again, pull it through again, and we're going to continue on with our chain until we have the desired length. And this is just a small sample, so we're not going to be having a long chain. So now we are just going to finish that off, and we're going to count our chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The only difference between a single crochet and a double crochet is you need to yarn over first before you go into that first stitch, which is the second from the hook. Now I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go through the chain, then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go through 2 loops, and then I'm going to yarn over again and go through the last 2 loops on the hook. Now to go through the second stitch, I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to find where that is. And I've gone through that one already, so now I'm going to go through that one right there, and then I'm going to go through that chain, yarn over again, go through the chain, yarn over again, and go through the first 2 loops, and yarn over and go through the last 2 loops. And I'm going to continue that by yarning over before each stitch. Now we are at the last stitch in the chain, so now we're going to put the crochet hook through that last chain, and we're going to yarn over and go through the chain and yarn over, go through the first 2 loops and yarn over again and go through the last 2 loops. Now we're going to turn our work around and count our stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Before we begin row 2, we're going to chain 2 by yarning over, chain 1, and yarn over again and chain 2. Now I'm going to mark that last stitch at the end of the row. I already did the first yarn over on my hook, and here we have the first 2 chains, and we will not go through either one of these chains. We will find our first stitch, and then we are going to go under both sides of that stitch. We're going to yarn over and go through that stitch, and yarn over and go through the first 2 loops, and yarn over again and go through the second 2 loops on the hook. Now I'm going to continue on by yarning over and finding that next stitch, and going under both sides of that stitch right there. Then yarn over, go through the stitch, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, and go through those last 2 loops. And then we're going to continue to the end of the row until we get to our last stitch with the stitch marker in it. And then we're going to finish that up, and I sped up the video a little bit. So we are just going to yarn over, go under that last stitch, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, and go through the last 2 loops. We're going to turn our work around right now, and this is where at the end of the row you would count your stitches to make sure you had the right amount. And after you count your stitches, you would put your stitch marker in the end, and then you just chain 2 and continue on. But you want to be careful at the end of the row that you don't put your stitch marker in this curved part here. Right here is the chain 2 from the previous row, and if you add stitches, it's going to curve outward and you're going to increase, and you don't want to do that. So be sure you get the stitch marker in the last stitch. So here you have a small swatch completed, and now we're just going to cut that off, and we are going to sew in our loose ends, and I'm going to speed that up, and you can go back to the beginning and watch it a little slower if you need to. And I'm going to cut off that final thread, and then that is all for today. We have the single crochet, and the rows for the single crochet are shorter, and it's not as stretchy as a double crochet, and I'll show you on this piece here. This is taller, and it is a lot stretchier, as you can see here. And the single crochet and the double crochet are 2 of the basic stitches you'll need in just about every project.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you in the next video. Be sure to share with a friend, like, and subscribe. Bye.